find out it worked.
I just kept trying it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. There we go. Go back to. Don't want to watch it. Okay. The share screen. Oh, not mine. Just a second. Okay, Dave, let's see. Let me change the view to speaker.
Okay.
And take it away.
Okay, do you see the big intro slide, introduction to All-Star?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so first a caveat. I am not the end-all be-all expert on All-Star. So especially for the first part of it, I gave this presentation to the Ventura Club last week, and in preparation for making these slides, I was basically just going to talk about the little nodes I made, but as I dug into it, you know, All-Star existed for a different reason to begin with, and I wanted to give some information on that. So we're going to go into some basics first, and it may not be 100% accurate, but it's going to be pretty darn close. So apologies for those that know more about this than I do. All right, first off, we're going to talk about repeater linking, and we'll know why a little later. But right now, there's a couple of different ways you can link repeaters. If they're in the same closet, like if you got UHF and VHF in the same closet, you can just connect them with a physical cable between them. Now, if they're separated by a distance, like San Ynez Peak and La Vigia, I'm just guessing here, that's probably something I don't have good knowledge on. As long as there's an RF path between them, I'm going to turn on my pointer. Sorry, guys, laser pointer. As long as there's an RF path between them, you can essentially link them like they're in the same closet, but instead of using a physical wire, you're going to use RF linking over like analog products. All right, so what do you do when you have stuff that's separated and there is no RF link between them? Oh, I got to change something here. Well, you link them over digital, and you can do it over radio over IP. And what this does is it basically digitizes the audio and sends it through an IP network. Now, all of us think of the internet as being like, if someone talks about the network, that's what comes to mind. But it doesn't have to be the internet. It can be like the Arden link, where it's own, you know, it's its own little private setup. I imagine some companies probably have their own, you know, internal lines also. They probably lease them through Cox or whatever, but you know, they're the ones that own the fiber in the ground, but you know, somebody rents it. But anyways, a repeater in one location that doesn't have an RF link to another repeater, they can be linked over this digital link. And again, it can be internet, but doesn't have to be. So what are the pros and cons of linking over the internet? And that's specific to the internet itself. So again, you know, distance between repeaters is no longer an issue. You don't need an RF path between them. You can manage the links easily. A lot of products have a web type interface to go into and see what's hooked up. You can tear down links and bring up other links willy-nilly. And you can also make multiple links without additional hardware. Like, what do I mean by that? Well, in the analog case where we have two repeaters pointing at each other through an RF link over an analog link, you know, if you wanted to connect now TZ to some other repeater, you actually got to climb the tower and point that little RF link to your new destination. Well, with linking over the internet versus using a digital connection, you can tear down just by typing in, you know, the node number and connect to another one. And then the other option, the other benefit is that you can access the repeaters without a radio, and there'll be more examples of that here in a moment. Now, what are the cons? And this is probably why the attendance is kind of low tonight. Internet linked repeaters they become standalone when the internet's down. So it's not something really to be used in emergency situations, but the internet's actually fairly reliable, and it typically is not a worldwide thing that goes down. So you might have some issues locally with certain people. Of course, if it happens at the repeater itself, well, the repeater's screwed, but in general, that doesn't happen for very long. The bigger deal is internet quality can cause audio problems. And this is typically what the complaints have been with delayed audio, which ends up, people step on each other. Not so much with All-Star, but certainly with DMR, garbled audio is a problem. But anyways, those are the cons for linking over the internet. So here's an example of a bunch of digitally linked repeaters. And what this is showing is like, okay, we've got one here on this continent, we've got one here on this continent. Well, they can be linked. Also, multiple ones can be linked together. And then down here, we've got, AI6VX down here in Ventura that is linking to these repeaters that I can't hit locally. But it's as if I am local to them by using a hotspot. So examples of this, I reached out to a few different repeater owners. I talked to Brian, I talked to Paul Strauss, WD6EBY, asking about, how their repeaters are tied together. Paul's repeaters are not tied together through a digital link. SBARC, I think Sanina has peaked to, I can't remember where the other location is. Is it Red Cross? That's over a digital link. Anyways, and the PAPA system is extensively linked using All-Star. Okay, so what is All-Star? So as I just was talking about, repeaters linking, All-Star is a digital way to link 2 or more repeaters together. It has high audio quality and supports quite a bit of, many different codecs. A codec is a way to digitize analog audio into a digital stream, but there's different types of digital streams to support different bandwidths, different error corrections, you name it. All-Star supports full duplex operation. This thing I use a lot when I'm doing the nets. I can hear when people step on me. I can hear when people step on each other. It's very handy for pulling information out of gibberish. All-Star is free. It's open source software. It currently uses inexpensive hardware, Raspberry Pi. They sell for about, well, if you can get them, about $35 to $40. It has a lot of linking capability. You'll see more about that later. And linking control is easily made. You can do it, on the end user radio itself, or you can log into a web page and change things. All-Star is very popular for linking repeaters because it has full repeater control built in. A little more details on that later. And you can set up repeaters to be open, closed, or private. So like, let's see, the 446-400 repeater that SBARC has, it's open. Somebody can go in there and link up to whatever. The PAPA systems, the linking between repeaters is not open. It's more of a closed system. And then finally, private systems that aren't exposed to the general public. So what is All-Star? I just talked about it being a way to link to repeaters. It's based on Asterisk. And what Asterisk is, it's a private branch exchange. So it's basically a telephone networking piece of software. It was created by a guy back in 1999 when he was looking at implementing a PBX and found that the solutions at the time were very expensive. And he said, well, screw this, I'm going to go create something else. And he did. And it's become one very popular piece of software as a PBX, very popular PBX software. Now, All-Star itself these couple of guys, a couple of ham guys, Jim Dixon, who unfortunately is a silent key, and Steve Rogers, they saw that, wow, there's a lot of functionality in Asterisk. And if it just could control repeaters, it would be an awesome way to connect repeaters. And basically it sums up here in this last sentence here. It's a way of designing a system the way I think it should be. So he added basically not sure if translation would be the right term. Hang on while I cough. But he added a front end or a call it. Gosh, this is the time when I wish I didn't forget things. Anyways, he added a way for Asterisk to control repeaters, and it became All-Star. And he did this in the early 2000s. So All-Star is not the only way to link repeaters. We have Echolink. It's half duplex only, lower audio quality, not open source. It is easy to use. I actually was using it when I couldn't get into SBARC, and I was using it on an iPhone app. There's also a PC app for it. The issue that I found, which is a big deal with Echolink, is people on it, you can't key up until the repeater drops the carrier. So it's not as easy as the person stopped talking and he unkeyed. You got to wait for the carrier to unkey to drop. And that can be pretty long for some repeaters, and good luck getting into a net. You will never get into things most of the time. It also had audio delays that were at least a second long. That was pretty unbearable to participate in nets and try and break into a conversation, which on top of having to wait for the carrier to drop, it's 2 strikes against it. And the third strike against it, which we had a prime example with K6TZ, is that if too many people are connected, it chews up bandwidth, and it was causing audio quality issues for everybody and screwing up repeater operations for the normal people on RF. There is also another method called Internet Repeater Linking Project. And this is one example where I didn't do a lot of research on this. So this is taken from the web. You'll just have to take my word for it. And if you're interested in it, dig in and do some of your own research. But it's not open source, needs specialized hardware. The linking is done through the radio only, so you don't have the web to do it. You don't have an app on your phone, and it has limited linking capability. So because of all this, All-Star is pretty popular. There's a lot of nodes out there. This makes things look bigger than they actually are, because this person is one node, and he certainly geographically is not that large. And you'll have to excuse, I think there's some wraparound here to be able to get Antarctica and North Pole in here. I had to stretch it a little wide, but anyways, there's a lot of users out there and a lot of nodes, so it's not like not being used, or it's just something that's just getting started. So why would you care about All-Star? Because I just talked about why All-Star is around, which is for linking repeaters, but why would all of us sitting around here right now care about it? Because we're not putting repeaters up, we're not linking them. Well, the reason why we'd want to use it is that we can use repeaters, or you can hit repeaters that you normally cannot access. So if there was Jim N6SXB, I think I screwed up his call sign, but he moved to Arizona. If he wants to keep in touch with us, he could get on All-Star and connect to 43763 and be exactly like he were in our backyard or your backyard. In me, I'm using it because I'm here in Ventura, and although Ventura could hit San Ynez Peak, I'm back here on the 118, the 126 around the corner, and I cannot get an RF link in. With Diablo Peak, I can now, but at the time I couldn't. And of course, if you want to talk to someone in another state or country, so you can connect to repeaters you can't normally access. You can also participate in nets or connected hubs. So there's certain hubs where they aggregate repeaters in some area. We got the Hawaiian hub, East Coast Reflector, Philadelphia hub, just to name a few. There's some in the UK. Or there's subject matter nodes also that you can hit. There's the blind hams, very popular with Dennis and OEB and Chuck in 6CPN. And again, you can keep in touch with your local repeater when you're away from home. And quite a few SBARC members have purchased or built a node just for this reason. When they travel, they can still have a connection to K6TZ, just like they're, as if they never left. So that's why All-Star's pretty cool. So what is All-Star versus DMR? Because it's kind of the same thing. DMR is digital. If you don't have a repeater next to you that supports it, you're going to have to use a hotspot. Both allow you to talk over great distances, and by themselves, they're not useful until you connect to another node. Well, that's all very true. Now, All-Star has some better, here's the pros of All-Star over DMR, is you can use the radios you already have. Well, what does that mean? Well, DMR, you actually have to buy a DMR radio. The digital encoding and decoding is built into the radio itself. Whereas All-Star, you're just using analog FM, or in my case, you can actually build an All-Star node that has no RF, in or out at all. It's a radioless node. But in any case, you can get on the air and play with DMR with the radio you have, especially if there's an All-Star repeater nearby. To me, the audio sounds better. And again, it's my opinion, but every Tuesday night when we have the DMR net going, wildly different audio levels, network issues causing, robotic sounds, tuning radios between radios and hotspots not being quite right, and the bit error rate goes up. I haven't really experienced that with All-Star at all. Personal nodes and hotspots seem to have less issues. Again, this is my experience. I think every Tuesday on the DMR net, we're troubleshooting some connection with somebody. I haven't had that problem with All-Star. They just stay up and don't really have audio issues. But again, that's personal, but I have been using it for probably a year and a half now. This is also my personal opinion that you could probably have a possible greater audience since it's analog FM, because what you can do is you can connect to a repeater somewhere else, and your audience is other people on analog FM versus, people that only have a DMR radio and happen to be on the talk group that, you're connected to. Now, what are the pros for DMR? Well, and this is from Brian, he helped me with this. It's designed to support groups. So if there's a particular subject matter or a particular club or whatever, you could all get together on one talk group and have a round table. You could do that up here too, but it doesn't seem to be as prevalent in All-Star to have like groups, actual subject groups. Again, communications are more network and group centric, as I just mentioned. And switching groups is as easy as changing the channel in the radio, because your radio will have different talk groups assigned to the channels. And all you have to do is just key up on a new channel. With All-Star, you're going to have to tear down the link and do a new link. Not that it's difficult, but it is a difference. So here's an example of a small group of people linked to the Alaska hub. And this was something I grabbed. I basically connected my All-Star node up to my, to the Alaska hub just to see who was connected. And then I did this bubble chart. So one thing, there's a lot of tools online for looking at connections between All-Star nodes and users. This is called a bubble plot because we got bubbles everywhere. And here we are is the Alaska All-Star hub, node 29332 that I connected to. And you can see where all these other people are connected to. So here's a person in Alaska, UK, New Jersey, a lot of Alaskas. I guess that's Arkansas, California, Belfast, and there's some more down here. But, this is a small grouping. If you were to look at the K6TZ All-Star bubble map, you'd see, 3 or 4 connections. typically it's me with 1 or 2 nodes and JFB and sometimes VMH Scott. So this is a small, grouping. Here's a big grouping. This is the Win system. Win system, like all their repeaters are have an all-star node associated with them, or all-star number. I clicked into one of them. I think this is during the Insomniac net that I think is held nightly. And there happened to be 130 plus connected nodes. I think it was more like 140, but by the time I took the screenshot and had the wits to go and say, oh yeah, let me go not count them, but go look up the tally, it was 130-ish. But you can't make out what all these are, but I guarantee you they're all over the US and likely, in other countries too. Okay, so I've got you interested. I discussed why it might be fun to play with All-Star. Well, how do you get started? So there's basically 2 ways to do it. And this isn't that unusual or different than DMR. If you've got a local analog repeater, you can use that. Now it has to be a local analog FM repeater that supports All-Star and allows you to make connections. And not all the repeaters do. You're lucky you have the 446-400 repeater to do that with. So it has to be accessible and open, so configurable. And you can use your HT that you already have. What you do is you send DTMF tones to the repeater to link and unlink to other All-Star nodes. Well, what do you do if you don't have a repeater that has All-Star access? Well, just like DMR, you use a hotspot. So you use a hotspot that's connected to the internet, and there's different ways or different versions you can create or buy to do that. You can do a radioless version, which I'll go into, an RF version, which is very much like how a DMR hotspot works. You can build it as a simplex or a duplex node. And all of them, all the things I'm going to describe here in a moment, they're all Raspberry Pi based. That's very common to All-Star nodes, also DMR nodes. And most of the solutions use this very inexpensive USB sound card attached to the Raspberry Pi to create, the radioless version, the RF version, what have you. All right, so that's the 2 ways to do it. So let's say you do have access to a local All-Star capable repeater, which, you Santa Barbara people, again, are lucky in that you have it. There's really not anything down here local to me. Okay, so again, you use the radio you have to control the repeater. And this was taken from the SBARC website itself for the commands to link the repeater to other repeaters. And so you do a *2 and then the node number. And that connects you to in monitor only mode. So that means you just listen, you can't participate in the conversation, or transceive mode in which you can participate in the conversation. When you're done, please tear down your link so that you're not, leave it for the next person to do what they want. And these other commands. So this is how you can do it from your HT if you have access to a repeater that supports All-Star and lets you do connections. What do you do if you don't have one, a repeater that can has All-Star access? Well, you can again make what's called a hotspot. Hotspots typically go as a description for DMR, but I'm going to use it the same for All-Star too. Now, if you want to buy one that's fully built because your days of soldering are over or whatever, you want something quick, you'll notice the dollar signs here, $3 sign, so it is pricey. There's really only one option these days, and that's the clear node. There was one other gentleman, I think out in Arizona, that had something, but he folded up shop. So this is Jerry Philby's company. Quite a few SBARC members own these, and JFB has one, N6CPN. I don't think Scott bought one. And then OBB's got one. So this thing has a built-in RF radio, just like a DMR. It is frequency agile in that you can set the RX and TX frequency. Honestly, you just set it up for simplex, because all this is doing is going between your HT in your hand in your house to this little box sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's low power, and you use a custom app on your iPhone to do your configuration. Now you can do it also on your HT with DTMF tones, like I just showed you on the previous page, because this runs software just like is being run on a repeater. It follows the same command sets over DTMF over the air, but it's much easier to do connections through the app. So Jerry's created this custom app, and it uses AWS, Amazon Web Services, for coordination. Now, what does that mean? Instead of you using your app and it goes straight to your Clear node and configures it, instead, it goes out to Amazon and pushes information out there and pulls it off. And then the Clear node itself also picks off the information there for the configuration. Now, why would Jerry do something like that? Actually, it makes life a little easier for people that don't want to do the work, in that you don't need to know what the IP address is of your Clear node to access it. Well, if you're in your house and you have static IP addresses, that's no big deal. But if you're traveling, it could be a big deal. So if you're going to hit the road and you plug this into, your in-laws router, it's going to pick up an IP address, and you may not know what it is to be able to do your linking. So that's really the big deal for buying one from ClearNode, is besides it being fully assembled, is it's a little easier to do configuration, because as long as this thing can get to the internet and your phone can get to the internet, you don't have to worry about them getting to each other. They go through a third party.
What happens if Jerry doesn't pay the bill?
Good question. We may we may find that out 10, 15, 20 years from now. I'm not sure. You can use this wired or wirelessly. This is, again, just a Raspberry Pi with a board stack on top of it. You can't see it, but on this end, there's an Ethernet jack. So you can just plug it hardwired into your router. And really, if it's in your house, that's probably the best way. Or it will do Wi-Fi to your router. Again, all these products are really Raspberry Pi based, and there's a really bad Raspberry Pi shortage that's ongoing. So getting one of these in a timely manner could be difficult. And then I have some recent experience trying to help out a club member and getting support from the company. I wouldn't say it's not there. It's just you send a message and you wait a day and you get a reply, and then you send a message and get a reply. So again, if you don't want to build one, this is pretty much the only way you can go. It is a nice device. He's got it packaged nicely. For me, I'm a cheap bastard, and I don't think I would pay that much for it, knowing the guts of it. All right, so enough on that. So that was the fully built. These are boards for a almost, it's not quite a kit in that you don't have to, let me back up and just follow what I wrote. Okay, so if you want something that's almost built but not quite, there's a company out there or a website called hamprojects.info, and that's really the best site I've seen that has pieces for building an all-star if you don't want to do it completely from scratch. He's got a number of products, and they all have kind of human names. There's the Shari, he's got the Brian, I don't remember the other names. He just came out with a new one with a different name. But in any case, they're all variations of that CM108 USB chip that I was talking about before. So this is a USB sound card chip. Jerry's ClearNode uses the same chip. It used, on this board, there's this RF, this Agile RF transmitter unit here. I can't remember how many milliwatts it puts out. Let's call it 60 milliwatts. And then some support electronics. And what you can buy from Ham Projects this is like the Shari, I believe. That's what Levi originally bought. And it's got it set up so it can plug into a Raspberry Pi. And it already had all the SMT components installed. And I think all you had to do was stuff the through holes, so like the antenna connector. I don't know about the USB connectors, the LEDs, and I think the RF transmitter. But otherwise, it was partially done. And then, of course, you supply your own Pi. And then since probably at least a year ago, they now have a Pi hat where this whole board sandwiches on top of a Raspberry Pi. and it's very clean. So it ends up being pretty much a clear node. It's about the same size, much less cost, less than half. I think the self-contained one, I think this is about 80, maybe $90, including the case. And you add your own Raspberry Pi, so throw another $40 on top of it. You do not get the nice connection app that Jerry wrote, but there's other ways that are very nice too that I'll go into in a moment. So here's what you'd want to do if you don't want to completely build it from scratch. And again, the pricing is lower, $1 to $2 for the solution. All right, well, let's go completely do it yourself. And that's what I've been doing because, again, I'm cheap. So all-star node from scratch. Again, I want to emphasize everything's going to need a Raspberry Pi of some flavor, generally a 3B plus, or a 4. But you have choices on what you want to build. So you can build a radioless node. And that's what I typically, when you hear me on the net doing the swap net or doing the TME on Thursdays, that's what I'm on, full duplex. There's one very inexpensive way to do it. You buy these headphones for $10 and you add a Raspberry Pi to it and you are done. If you wanted to get a little more complicated, you could buy a USB sound card, use a computer microphone headphones that you already own. The sound card's $6, and here it is down here. It's $3, and I think I took this from the web, like a week ago. So $3 shipping from China, of course, and $3.30 for the unit itself. They do sell them on Amazon. A little more money, a little faster delivery. There's ones that are even cheaper, and the only difference is instead of gold plating on the USB connector, it's probably tinned. So that's how you build a radioless one, is headphones or this USB adapter with headphones. Now, what's special about this headphones is you can't just buy any set of headphones. This one has the CM108 chip inside built into it. The PTT button is the volume down button. But anyways, works really well. So let's say you want to actually build a radio-based one so that you can walk around your house. And that's what I also do. So if I'm not running the net, but I'm participating in the net, I'm using a radio-based half duplex all-star node. Again, it's got a Raspberry Pi in it. Again, it's got this sound card in it. And I have it hooked up to a single HT, and I'll show you the picture of it in a moment. So the price to build this one is, a Raspberry Pi, this sound card down here, and an HT. And of course, it's exactly the same if you want to build a duplex RF1, but you just have to add 2 HTs to the mix. Not a big deal. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the stuff I built. So this is my first all-star node I built, and I don't remember when, it's probably 2 years ago now. Here's my Raspberry Pi 3B plus. And there's that sound card. Now it did have to get modified a little bit. There's some pins on that tiny little IC. One of them is the PTT pin or the volume down pin that's got to be brought out. And the other one is the carrier detect, which is really important if you're doing an RF one. This is not RF, so you don't have to do the carrier detect. I've got a little 5-volt based amplifier here. It's just so I can drive this speaker I bought at a thrift store. Literally, it still has the thrift store price of 10 cents on it. Sounds very good. And this one, I used to have it hooked to TZ like 24/7 with the volume turned down. So if any activity is going on, I can hear it in my house. This this microphone I bought, online. It's a Linko something. I have a feeling it's a clone, not a genuine. I did buy a genuine microphone because there are issues with it recognizing, like if I wanted to do connections using the DTMF keypad on here, the audio settings for reliable DTMF operation is not the same audio settings you want for good voice quality when you're actually talking. And I couldn't find a way around it. So there is that gotcha if you go this route. Not a big deal, since there are apps that allow you to control your node, and honestly, it's easier to do it that way. So there you go. This still gets used. I resurrected it recently because, again, I kind of like to keep in touch with you guys, if only by listening. This is what I use a lot, and this is what I use for especially the nets. So when I'm talking to you guys and doing the net, so I've got these on. There's the boom mic. It's very important to put the little foam ball on it. The first time I use this, a couple of people sent me emails afterwards and saying, you know, every time you puff, you guys are you're blowing my ears out on the repeater. So make sure you put the foam ball on. This control normally, if it was hooked to a PC, would be like turning off the headphones, the audio. There's the volume up and down buttons, and then muting the microphone. Well, in this configuration, all you're doing is hitting the minus key, and that's your PTT. And of course, there's your Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, and that's it. Literally like 10 bucks. The CM108 chips inside there, and again, the PTT is the minus button. So a good way to get your feet wet, especially for you guys that already have Raspberry Pis that are sitting around doing nothing. And I recently just bought these headphones again for 10 bucks because one of the Ventura guys is building an all-star node, and he didn't exactly say that it was the headphones that I recommended, but in fact, what arrived was. And lastly, here's my radio-based node. So Raspberry Pi, CM103 USB sound card. So you can see a common thing here. And then all it is there's an umbilical going into this Baofeng. This is a Baofeng 888. It comes as a 2-pack for less than $20. I want to say it's like a 2-watt radio, but what I did was I went ahead and yanked off the final PA transistor, bridged the in and out with just a surface mount cap. And so now it's about, who knows, 50 milliwatts output, I think. Covers my house a block away. It's, you know, but I'm not radiating much further than, I don't know, basically one street around me. And there's its mate. These are 16 channel UHF only radios, but programmable. You use chirp to program it. So I've got channel 1 set up for my hotspot, or my all-star node. Okay, well, you're excited and you want to build one. How does a person actually do it? I gave you some options, and you don't want to spend the 350 bucks, and you don't want to get the partial stuff, or maybe you do. Well, the first step is buy your parts. So the first thing you're going to do is find yourself a Raspberry Pi. And again, they're in short supply and people on eBay are gouging. Ask a friend, get on a mailing list. I would recommend, well, gosh, if somebody's got a 3, you can buy for cheap, get that. But, you know, a 3B plus, if you plan on getting a Pi hat, you're going to want a 4 because it only fits on the 4. If you aren't using the Pi hat, you need to buy that USB sound card also. You know, parts includes USB sound card and any other fixturing that you might need. And you do need to modify the sound card a little bit. Again, you need to bring out the PTT signal. It's one of the pins on that surface mount chip. If you guys aren't good with surface mount, I'm more than willing to do it for free. You know, just get me the parts and you'll have it soonish. There's also the carrier detect, which is what you'll need, because if you use an RF based one, it needs to know when the squelch is actually broken on the radio. So anyways, there's a picture later that shows the modifications that are needed. You need to register and get an all-star number. So this is not unlike DMR where you register and get your DMR ID. So you go to allstarlink.org. Across the top, there's a registration link. Within 24 hours, you should have your node number. Next thing you do is you download either HamVoIP or All-Star Link software. And this is one area I am not going to cover. Basically, when All-Star was first created, there was one piece of software. And then when that one ham guy became a silent key, there was some disruption and or bad blood in the community, and it branched out. So there's one piece of software out there called HamVoIP. There's another one called All-Star Link. I've only ever used HamVoIP, so I'm used to it. I can't comment if All-Star Link is any better. And again, I don't have a lot of information on what the issue is between them. It has something to do with, like, I think this guy is not releasing his software into the public domain. But in any case, download one or the other and write it to your micro SD card, which what goes into your Raspberry Pi. You boot your Pi from your card and you go through the configurations. And there's quite a few configuration steps to do, but there's some decent tutorials. There's a last page for resources on here that has some of that information if you want to take a look at it. One of the things you have to do in the software is you need to be able to set some of the settings. So there's the polarity of the carrier detect. Like some radios will be positive going, some will go negative going. Same with the PTT. Does it need a grounded signal, or does it need one tied to V+? So there's that. There's also setting sound levels for your hardware. So, you know, if you have a microphone that's especially sensitive, you want to turn it down. If you have one that's not so sensitive, you got to turn it up. You know, the headphone solution takes something different. It's not a big deal. It's actually just very methodical. This one isn't as methodical or as easy, but it's something you're definitely going to want to do. There's some software that also runs alongside. If you install Ham VoIP, it might be in the All-Star Link software also. It's called Allmon or Supermon. And that basically allows you to log into your node over a web browser to control it. But it also allows apps to control it. And so you're going to want to run this. You know, I have a page that shows what the screen looks like on that. And then you connect to the internet, and that's it. You have your own All-Star node. And literally, once you get your number and you've got your hardware all configured and everything, you know, start to finish, an hour. Well, okay, an hour if you've done it a few times, 2 hours, 3 hours, but you know, it's pleasurable, and we all like tinkering with things. So heck, why not? All right, so this is what the All-Star Link page looks like. And down here, basically one of these buttons here, here's the login, sign up. But one of these tabs up here, you get to the, you know, sign up for All-Star Link. You need to be an amateur radio operator with a current license, of course. So that's what you give them. Click the button. There's some other things you have to let them know. And like I said, in about 24 hours, they give you your details. You can do a lot of other things on this page, but one of the things is manage your nodes. So sorry, the print's small because I tried to fit everything on here, but here's my 3 nodes. You can, once you have your node number, it's kind of like DMR. You can just change the last digit, or you add a digit, excuse me, on the end, and you can add up to 10 nodes. So I've got 3. This is my first one. That is the radio list with the HT mic, or excuse me, the mobile mic. That's the headphone version. No, I'm sorry, that's the RF version. That's the headphone version. But anyways, you can click on one of these things to manage your node. And when you set up your All-Star for the first time, you actually do need to click on it because you need this password in here. So you get your node number and you get a password, and those are 2 pieces of information that go into the Ham VoIP software or the All-Star Link software to configure your node. There's other things you can do here. If you know of somebody, like I'm helping like Chuck N6CPN, and I don't know his All-Star node number, but I want to find out, you know, what it is, I can click under list and stats and look up all-star nodes, and there's a search box, and I can type in his call sign and get, you know, information. When was the last time he was heard, what all-star nodes he's connected to in the past or is currently connected to. So pretty neat stuff. Again, not unlike DMR. Okay, so here's a close-up of that sound card. It's the CM108 chip. I didn't count the pins, but this package style would be called a quad flat pack because it's got pins all on the sides and it's flat. This is the USB connector. So to give you perspective on size, you know, the width of a USB-A connector is, you know, a little wider than what this chip is. The pin you need to pick off here, here's the after scene here. So the very corner one here, which would be this very corner chip pin, that's the PTT. Let's see, do I have this in the right direction? Yes, that's the PTT signal that's got to come out. The other side is the carrier detect has to come out. The good thing is, even though these pins are super small, it's the last pin. So you can come in from the side and blob all you want. And you'll be hard pressed to bridge across the other pins. So don't be too scared to give it a try. A lot of people take off these headphone connectors. So these are just 1/8 inch stereo plugs, headphones and microphone. I modified one of these for Frank K6FLD, and I left them on so that he could plug his, regular headphones and microphone, computer microphone in here. And all I did was wire off the PTT to a little button off the side. So it can be that simple. But again, a lot of people will, take everything off and add other things to this for interfacing to radios. And here's the inside of a Baofeng 888. Now they've gone through a couple of different revisions, and this is not my picture. And this is not my radio either. The one I have has a smaller circuit board, but the data, the info is out there on where you need to make your connection. So where do you hook your ground to? Ground's easy. You can find ground in a lot of places. Where do you connect to the microphone? And, sometimes you have to put a resistor in line so that the signal isn't too strong. Where do you connect your speaker to? So, you got to talk and you got to listen. And then this one is, what signal is this? Gosh, I forget which signal this is. I'm sorry. And then there's the carrier detect. In this particular case, it goes to the other side of the board to a chip. But anyways, don't be afraid. There's actually information out there for your radio. Again, the Baofeng 888s, they're cheap. They work well. Anyways, this is an example of modifying an HT for All-Star. Okay, so you built your All-Star node. How are you going to control it? Because, if I back up, sorry, there's no display on here. There's no buttons. There's no display, no buttons, no display. Yeah, buttons, but I told you about the DTMF issues. Very expensive, no buttons, no display. Okay, so how do you control it? So just like an actual repeater, you can send DTMF signals through your HT keypad and control it. In my radioless one, using the DTMF on the microphone itself, again, the best signal for DTMF versus the best signal for audio is very different. So this isn't a good way to do it. From an HT over RF, I think this would work well. In fact, I will get to test drive that when I go to Chuck's house on Monday to help him out with something. But really, the best way that I found is to use either Allmon and Supermon, and I'll show you that in a moment, and that's web-based, or use a cell phone app, and this is super convenient. So the web-based, this is what the web-based connection looks like. I've logged into one of my nodes, and it gives me all this information. So I can type in a node number and connect. I can disconnect and connect to participate or just monitor. I can send DTMF tones if I wanted to. I'm not sure why I would want to do that. I can take a look at the bubble chart. I can take a look at how hot my CPU is, which also is reflected down here. There's a lot of things you can do here. I believe, I'm not sure if it's on this page, but somewhere you can also set up like, connect to the Insomniac net every 10 p.m. and then disconnect from that and connect to the Philadelphia hub, whatever. This is powerful. But let's say you don't want to do it through a web page. Well, you can do it from your phone. This app is called Node Remote. This is my iOS app. I've got 3 nodes on here. Now, you do have to know the IP address of your device. And again, that's a thumbs up for Jerry and his clear node. If you went traveling and you don't know, IP address of your node, you're going to have a hard time controlling it. Plus your phone and the All-Star node has to be on the same subnet. But anyways, inside your house, easy peasy. you set it up, you click on one of these, you get taken to a separate screen, and you get these easy buttons. So I want to listen to SBARC, I touch this button and it connects. In Wind system, I touch this button and it connects, or I can disconnect. Or if one of these isn't my liking and I want to choose something else, I can click here and type in the number. I recommend this as a good way to control, or probably the best way to control your node. So we went over what All-Star is, why it would interest you, how to get into it, how to control it. Over some years, I've had some confusion or had some questions asked of me that comes across often enough that I just wanted to address it. So common questions or points of confusion for all-star nodes and or setting them up. And one of them is like, do I want a UHF or a VHF clear node, Shari or do-it-yourself node? Does it need to match the repeater I'm connecting to? So no, when you see somebody selling like the Shari node and you have an option for a UHF or a VHF radio in it, that has nothing to do with what you're connecting to on the other end, around the world, down the block. You know, it's really just between you and the hotspot sitting on your bookshelf. Is that, you know, what frequency do you want or band do you want to connect to that unit? I recommend getting UHF just because there's a lot more channels to pick from over VHF, but there's really nothing, there's no right or wrong really. And again, it has nothing to do with what you're going to connect to. Like if you wanted to connect to K6TZ 146790, which is a VHF signal over All-Star, you don't need to go buy a clear node that's VHF or a Shari that's VHF. You can go VHF or UHF, doesn't matter. Next up, should I run a PL tone on my radio based node? So a radioless one, there's no PL tone. There's no chance for interference to key up K6TZ and squash everyone's transmissions and make everyone mad at All-Star. But with a radio based one, that could very well happen. And so you want to make sure that on your radio based node between you and your base, and ClearNode does this, you know, you type it in and there's a setting you can do for PL tone, is you want to run one. You don't want to have your node screw up and make life difficult for other people and the repeater owners such that they don't want to support All-Star. So yes, run PL on your radio based nodes. Does my PL tone on my node need to match the input of the repeater I'm connecting to? Like, no, this is just between you and your node. You're going to hit that repeater anyways because you're going through the internet through into their All-Star node and just popping out magically like you are in UK or whatever repeater you're going into. The PL on your node between your HT and it is just, again, to prevent random noise from, you know, opening up the signal, or somebody down the block, you know, tinkering and playing, or, you know, who knows. So your PL tone is just between you and your node, has nothing to do with your destination repeater. Big question here, can I travel anywhere, and I mean anywhere, and connect back to K6TZ? That's a huge reason why a lot of people are buying All-Star nodes, is for that reason. Well, yes and no. Yes, if you have a reliable internet connection, absolutely. But the reliable interconnection is a big deal. iPhones are funny. As a hotspot device, they're rather difficult to connect to reliably. Not sure why that is, but it comes and goes. It doesn't always broadcast its SSID, even though you have it running all the time. This is an issue, you know, when I'm at Dennis's house and we're trying to test it and everything, it's hard to do. Same with my DMR nodes, it's the same thing. But if I were able to hardwire and plug into something, like I'm in the hotel and they actually offer a hardwire connection, yeah, piece of cake. And if you have a DIY setup, you know, and you're going to control it over your iPhone app, you need to be on the same network as your All-Star node so that they can actually talk to each other, because it does it through IP address. And so it's not trivial. It's not hard, but you have to be used to doing it. So can you travel anywhere and connect back to K6? He said, yes, but it kind of depends on your skill level. So make sure to ask some people what you intend to do, and see if you're up for it before you go off and spend the money. Now, again, you can use DTMF tones on your HT to make connections, and possibly that's the best way to go. Okay, so in summary, gosh, why would you want to use All-Star? Again, it's not for emergency communication, but 99% of the time we're not talking under emergency situations. So, getting out and connecting to non-local repeaters, hubs that support All-Star, that's the main reason for using it. Because we're not repeater owners. We're not putting repeaters all over the US and want to connect them. It's got very good sound quality. And again, most importantly, it feels like analog FM. Like when I key up and I unkey, I know I get a confirmation tone, just like a real RF repeater. I can tell that I'm getting in. When people step on each other, or I key up and step on someone else because I'm using a simplex node, as soon as I unkey, I hear the other person. DMR, I unkey, I hear nothing. And what happens a lot is we just locked out Brian because we started talking, not knowing he was about to, and he lost the connection and he doesn't come back for 30 seconds. Oh my gosh, that doesn't happen on All-Star. The barrier to entry is very low. It's a Raspberry Pi, which again, if the world were sane, it would be $40. It's not right now, but I mean, you can still get them for $40, but it's not trivial. And a $10 pair of headphones, USB headphones, very specific ones, mind you, and you're in. And you get a lot of options to play with. You can build a radioless one, the simplex duplex, a radio-based one. By the way, Ham VoIP also supports Echolink. So if you wanted to tinker with Echolink, you could turn your node into an Echolink node. Scott, VMH, his All-Star node is on steroids. He supports darn near every single digital format there is out there. He'd be a good one to talk to for a future presentation. But if you're into tinkering, and you're not into spending a lot of money, and you want to talk to people or even just listen to people that's not local to you, this is a cheap way to do it. So this page is a list of resources, and I'll just leave it here. I don't know if Brian's going to post these slides or not, but you can always email me and I'll send it to you. But here's All-Star link where you get your All-Star number. And if you wanted to use the All-Star link-based software, that's where you'd get it. Likewise for Ham VoIP, for the Ham VoIP-based Raspberry Pi image. Here's the seller of the all-in-one, very expensive, but it's done for you. Clear node unit. This is the other guy that has quite a few almost built, partially built. I'd kind of consider it a kit, but you got to bring a little more of your own pieces to it. You want to do it all yourself? This website is excellent. It has details on modifying the USB sound card. There's examples of modifying the Baofeng, step-by-step instructions for configuring All-Star for a particular product, but it's generic enough. Again, they all use the sound card. They all use a Pi that you can follow it. And this is kind of key again, enabling All-Mon. It should say also Supermon. And then finally, here's a source of USB headphones. The brand name is MPOW and the models is 071, but what I find is it gets sold without those names in it. This particular one, earlier in the week, it was, I don't know, let's call it $16 with the $6 coupon. So $10 shipped, add tax. So again, you can get into it pretty cheap. And that's it. That's the end of my presentation. Any questions or comments? Yes, Mike, you got to unmute yourself.
Okay, I have a couple. One, how do I get my All-Star node to stop from intermittent transmit receive on the repeater site? Because it it pauses during the, if the repeater drops, I have to wait until the repeater drops in order for me to send a signal on my All-Star. So How do I shorten that signal?
Gosh, I know you've had that problem for a while, and honestly, I think I'm just gonna have to pay you a visit because none of mine do that. I don't think it's a ClearNode issue either, so I'm not sure what's going on in your case, Mike. But I can step on people. Yeah, I'm not sure, Mike. I'll have to just come over and take a look at your setup.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think it has a lot to do with my internet connection, but I also am concerned about the timing in my ClearNode might be too far apart in transmit receive. So I think that's a setting in there that needs to be adjusted.
You could be very right. I don't think Dennis or Chuck has had issues. Now, Chuck hasn't used his very often, much to have a lot of experience with it. But when I was there earlier this week, I didn't experience stuff like that. So I think we'll just have to take a look at your settings. I'll try and coordinate sometime I can pop over there in the next couple of weeks.
Sorry, I have one more question.
Yes.
Now, does TZ have more than one node to the connected repeaters?
To the connected repeaters, there's only one, the 43763.
Okay.
The all-star node that is standalone, the 446400, only has one all-star node to it, and it is a standalone repeater. It's not linked to the others, and that's the 43764 node.
Now, I have experienced doing like two nodes at the same time being logged in on the clear node, and that caused an interference between TZ and say like Washington, DC. So where I was talking to somebody in Washington, next thing you know, they're hearing not only Washington, but hearing TZ. So we can't have more than two nodes at the same time on a clear node.
Well, you shouldn't, because you'll confuse a lot of people, because all of a sudden K6TZ users are going to go, why am I listening to Portland or Seattle or whatever? So that is one thing, is that if you can link more than one repeater, you can link more than one repeater, and you can cause all kinds of hell, because again, All-Star in the background, it's a repeater linking tool, and you can link many repeaters. And yeah, that's something that you need to be aware of and not do, is log into more than one repeater at once. Now, the app I use won't let me do that. You can probably do a setting on the clear node for that too. I can ask Jerry about that and see if we can set yours up that you always it'll automatically disconnect a connected link before you do another one.
Well, I also think that Jerry's clear node is really outstanding. The only problem I have is it takes about 15 to 20 seconds, maybe even 30 seconds for the process to connect. So here's my situation. When I connect to my clear node, I don't even turn my clear node on until I actually get my app on my IP address that I need to be on. Like if I use my hotspot, I turn my hotspot on first. I let the hotspot go. Then I plug my clear node, and the clear node goes, I'm looking for that hotspot. When it finds the hotspot, it works, but it takes about 15 seconds.
Yeah. It has to do with going back to Amazon Web Services and exchanging information. For everyone else, I do want to address one thing that Mike said, that you'll find if you're trying to connect. Let's say you build an all-star node, and the first thing you want to do is connect to K6TZ, because it's family. You know people on it, so you're going to get someone to answer you back. If you connect any other node and say W0GFB monitoring, they're going to ignore you because whatever, it happens to analog repeaters. You just built your all-star node, you powered it up, and you try to make a connection to K6TZ, and you get connection failed. And it'll do that for 1 to 10 minutes. It's not your node. It has to do with the database. So All-Star can be configured between 2 repeaters and not phone home and use All-Star link website or databases as a database. You can hard code IP address information between repeaters and be self-contained. You don't have to worry about, All-Star link being up and running. Well, the way it's configured with K6TZ is that it goes out and checks the database because it has to know how to get back to you. It knows that W0JFP has an All-Star node, but what's his IP address so I can get back to him, so I can make that link, so I don't have to go through a third party. It's directly from K6TZ to you, but it has to know how to do that connection. And the way K6TZ works is, and I'm going to screw this up, but experience tells me, is it only checks the database every 10 minutes. So when you boot up your node and it's running, where in that 10 minutes are you? If it just checked a second ago, you're screwed for 10 minutes. If it checked 9 minutes and 59 seconds, hey, guess what? As soon as you connect, it'll connect. But what I do for the SwapNet is I plug in my node 15 to 20 minutes ahead of time. And then when I make the connection, it connects. My other nodes, they're on 24/7, so I don't have a problem with that. It's only when you basically fire it up fresh. You may not be able to connect to everything for 10 minutes. The only node I've had a problem with, and not that I go to a lot of nodes, is K6TZ, and it's not a big deal. You just have to accommodate it. So I wanted to let you guys all know, if you build your own and it doesn't connect to K6TZ, doesn't mean that you did something wrong. Wait 10 minutes. Was there somebody? Oh yeah, go ahead. I don't know your name though. Sorry.
It's Levi.
Hey, Levi.
Hey, I posted in the chat room. You touched briefly about the. There you are. Let's see. You touched briefly on the issue of selecting frequencies. Yeah.
Let me share that screen.
There's more detail there about picking frequencies, and a lot of times, like if you order a clear node, he won't know what frequency to use, and he may stick it on a repeater input or a repeater output. And so it's important when you're setting it up, whether you're doing it yourself or whether you're ordering a clear node and having that gentleman set it up for you, that you pick one of these frequencies that will hopefully be in the clear here in Southern California. So
I think Chuck picked 444 or something like that, didn't he?
Yeah, he's on 440.
Or 440, yeah.
Yeah, and I can't get into his clear node to change anything right now.
Yeah, so that's up top
I'm
where
sorry, go ahead.
Matt suggests those. Those are the ones that that people should consider using: 440, 445, 446.860, 441.860. So any of those are useful for analog. And those are different than the ones that you'd use for a DMR hotspot, which are actually down in the 430s, which I don't know if they're listed in this article or not, but it's a different subject. But yeah, you want to.
Yeah, the 430s are in the allocated for weak signal.
Yeah. So you don't want to pick those for this.
Okay.
Question.
Go ahead. I think, is that Mike? I'm sorry, I lost my screen.
That's absolutely true. My clear node, when I first set it up, had a big issue with that specific frequency. So it had to be in that 440 range, and it had to be a specific PL tone as well. So make sure we follow that because it's important.
Thanks. Any other questions? Hey, Tom.
Yeah, hi. A quick question. So I went through the process to try to get a node number and set up the All-Star account, got the confirmation email back, but I was a little confused. It seemed to suggest I needed to have the Raspberry Pi server before I could get the node number. And I just wonder if maybe I'm misunderstanding that, and I can go back, give it another try. But
I don't remember having that issue. Let me log into my All-Star link node.
I don't want to bog down the presentation here. I'll try again, but it was unclear to me.
Yeah, but I know when I first got it, let me go to my portal. So there's two different things.
You can get your node numbers without, way ahead of time.
Yeah.
that's
Shouldn't be a problem.
The email I got, just to read it, it says, you add so you need a server, which is the Pi, then you add the server to your account. Once you've added a server, you can request one or more nodes for the server.
I'm pretty sure that's like instantaneous. Because when I got my node number, it was like a 522760. And when I went into the, so I'm sorry, let me back up. There's the portal, and then there's the server settings, and that's what they set up for you. And then when I went to node settings, in there, I can add a node. And so I was able to basically get a node number from that I would use in the Pi.
Okay. Thanks for your help.
Tom, I think,
Sorry to bog things down.
Tom,
Yeah.
I think you are, the way the language they're using is making it sound like you need to have the server in your possession, but you can just go on the portal, create the server, and then create the node.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got you, Levi.
It doesn't mean that you actually have to actually have it. It just means like create the configuration for it in the portal. Then the node lives on that server. It's for people who have multiple servers. The language they're using is really for like people who have repeater systems where you've got 5 different servers or something. So just create one server for yourself and then a node.
Excellent. Thank you for the help, all of you. I appreciate it.
Sure. Any other questions? Again, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
None here, Dave.
Okay, I was just going to say, it's a lot of people are like, it's not RF, it's not real radio. And, in some respects it is, but, if you have a hotspot, it's RF to your hotspot. But again, an emergency, you're probably not going to want to use it. Although in an emergency that's not local to you, you might be interested in logging in and listening and monitoring only some all-star node, back east when there's a hurricane or a tornado or something, who knows, some natural disaster. So, it doesn't have to be an emergency in your area to be interesting and accessible.
There's those of you that don't listen to the Cuckoo Net, we frequently have a truck driver named Tim who checks in. He was in Santa Barbara. His wife worked there for a few months, and he didn't join the club, but he came and hung around at the club station on Saturdays. Nice guy. Anyway, he's now a long haul trucker, and he checks in from all over the U.S. I mean, one day he's in Arizona, the next day he's in Tennessee, and the day after that he's in Maine. And he uses it through his cell phone, and or you might have one of those hotspots, I think. But anyway, he keeps in touch, and I'm sure it's not just us. I'm sure he's checking into nets all over the place, and he's always totally audible. Great signal, and it's interesting to hear from him. We have another couple members that have gone on a cross-country trip, and until they went into Canada, they were checking in almost every morning, and they sound like they're in your driveway. So it's very useful for stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun, and if you're going on a trip and you don't want to be, or like a couple of our members have moved, out of the area, and you build one of these, and it's just like being here.
Yeah, and before I had mine, it was difficult to get in and participate. You listen, the online streaming's 30 seconds delayed. And then the online chat, it's hard to run the net and keep looking at the chat, so I couldn't participate. And then I got Echo Link, and then I couldn't participate because I had to wait till the repeater unkeyed. And then DMR was going to be like, oh, I can finally get in, but it's only DMR to DMR. It's not DMR to FM analog. So I'm only talking to a choice few people, and not everyone got DMR radios. And then once I got the All-Star node, now I might as well be in Santa Barbara. It's that easy, and the quality's that good. acts like an FM analog repeater. So no, I really have had fun with it.
So Dave, I'm actually programmed in my app 440 transmit 110.9. So that's what my frequency is set at.
Okay, yeah, no, that's where Levi and Matt.
But I don't understand why I have to wait for the repeater to drop so I can transmit, because it's like 2 seconds.
Yeah, like I said, I'll just have to come over and take a look, because I'm not experiencing that with my nodes, and I haven't heard of Dennis complaining about that with his node either.
Okay, well, we'll talk later. Thanks.
Okay. Yep. Well, thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep. Throw it back
That was
to Brian.
a great, that was really good.
Yeah, I get tongue-tied a little bit, so thanks for putting up with me.
No, you did excellent.
Mhm.
Outstanding
Thank you.
job. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah, you did a great job. Let's put us back in the gallery mode here so we can see everybody. I guess that's going to be about it. Let me tell you about next month's meeting. We had a guy named Tom Knoll, or Steve Knoll. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
He did a presentation for us in November of 2019, and it was really, really interesting. He sets up a whole display here of 10 gigahertz gear, and he shows us all kinds of different RF radiation, knife edge, and he has little dinky antennas that show like a corner reflector or a Yagi or things like that. And he's able to clearly demonstrate in a space as big as one of these tables how all this stuff works. And it was probably the single best presentation I've ever seen for taking all that stuff that you hear about and that you think might have, well, maybe I reflected off the mountains, or maybe it was knife edge going over a hill or something. And he actually shows you how it works. He shows you the effects of polarization, all kinds of interesting things. So it's a meeting you don't want to miss. And you really want to, oh yeah, there, sorry. And you really want to try and be here in person, because it's very visual and audio, and there's an audio component, a visual component. And he's got like a signal bar that shows you the strength of the signal. It's excellent presentation. He's really into it, and he's really good at it. So mark it down on your calendars, whatever the 21st, I think. 21st. October 21st. Do your best to be there, because you'll be glad you did. A lot of people that didn't make it the last time said, "Oh man, can you get that guy to come back sometime?" Well, he didn't do anything for a couple of years, and this is going to be his first presentation in 2.5 years. So and we get him here, so that's going to be fun. Everybody should be here.
It'll be better in person.
Much better in person. You're not going to get a lot out of it if you're on the. I mean, you'll be able to see it, but you're not going to be able to. You're not going to get the in the room experience doing it on Zoom. We'll do it on Zoom.
No,
but
you have to be there.
You got to be there.
Here in Ventura, it's really good.
Yeah, it's one you don't want to miss, especially unless you're not a ham. But if you ever wonder how signals get from point A to point B, you have a much better understanding about it after seeing his presentation. And he's a neat guy. He does a good presentation too. He's real into it, real animated. And of course, he's a couple years older now. Maybe he's not quite as animated, but he was animated enough. He's got some to spare. Anybody have anything else for the club before we adjourn for this month? Any other questions?
Did you want to talk about the rover?
Oh yeah, we are looking for a new rover master. If you haven't been to the club website lately, check it out. We've got I put an ad on not an ad, but a post on the front page. We're looking for somebody just to make sure that that it gets washed occasionally, that, somebody checks the oil on it, somebody starts it up, drives it around the parking lot or takes it around town for a little cruise. It's a real chick magnet. So it's one of those things you want to, it's almost too good to pass up. But what a lot of people don't realize, that Rover's there for everybody to use. And, we don't have to have an event for the Rover to be used. If you have an idea or a couple guys want to go to a mountaintop
So I can go take it out in 4x somewhere and go push that thing up and
just make sure you can get it back.
Well, I'll take the truck and I can pull it back. So,
there you go. Well, if you have to pull it back, leave it there. Would you just bring the radio?
Just bring the the telescope.
No, but it's a club resource, and we want it to either get used or we're gonna get rid of it. But we're paying a couple $1,000s a year to keep the insurance up on that, and the miscellaneous catalytic converter here and there, and things like that. And so we really want it to get used. So it doesn't have to be an event. It doesn't have to be one of the board members or something don't have to be involved. If you got an idea, let me know.
Brian, I got an idea. Brian.
Well, let me write this down. This was yeah, go ahead.
We've got witnesses.
If you have a Cadillac converter that was stolen, don't replace it with the OEM. Replace it with a third party. I had this issue with a muffler mechanic.
It's a done deal.
It's really interesting, because it's like, okay, you pay $300 or $400 for a cat, and the muffler guy goes, well, I'm worried about my cat and my truck, and it's lifted, somebody's going to steal it. And he says, he looked underneath it and he says, that's a MagnaFloat. It's worth $50. They ain't going to touch that. If it's an OEM dealer catalytic converter, they're going to steal it. Okay, well, so here's your point.
Yeah.
Buy yourself a third party, goddamn, excuse my language, but buy yourself a third party cat and don't worry about it.
Okay. Anyway, so that's if you guys want to, on field day, we have typically tried to put something together, but people aren't interested, or it's hard to make plans in advance for people these days. But even if it's field day in that morning and you want to go take the van somewhere and do something, do it. I've got the keys. Just get in touch with me.
Places to take it.
Yeah, I mean it's fully equipped. We've got new radios in there. We got a computer. It's got a generator.
Dave,
it's got new batteries in it. Solar. It's got everything. So just keep that in mind.
A Rover trip.
Yeah, road trip.
Yeah.
The only thing it doesn't have is a stereo.
We go to TRW and fill it up full of gear.
Hey, Eric, you get the vehicle. I'll follow you up in the truck and we'll have fun.
There we go. Yeah, it could be really cool. That thing would be really awesome in some places that really aren't that hard to get to. Go have a barbecue or something.
There you go. All right. That's about all I got to talk about. So we'll be at the club station in just about 12 hours. So opening up down there till noon, or at least noon. So come on by if you're in the area. And otherwise, thanks for participating. Thanks for coming. Thanks for logging in. And we'll do it all again next month.
Thanks, Dave, for your presentation.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Thank
and
you, Dave.
I'll get with you at some point, Mike.
We really
appreciate that.
Yep. Good night, all.
Have a good one, Levi, and everybody else there.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everybody.